Hi, my name is Betty, and I am 23 years old. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of how I went from having nothing to having everything. Well, yeah, one thing is true. I belong to a privileged family, and my parents were loaded, but trust me, I never relied on their money. Everything I achieved was on my own. Both my mom and dad had high-profile jobs in the banking sector. That's how they met each other, at their workplace. When I was a kid, I used to ask my mom why she married dad. Her answer would be, he was rich and successful like me. It was a perfect match. Even though I was a kid, I knew that marrying someone for that reason was not the right thing to do. What about love? I used to ask further. Did you like dad? Betty, Mom would say in a stern voice, the first thing you need to survive in this world is wealth. And after that, status. Stop watching those stupid movies and getting delusional ideas. You have to perform well at your school and get a high-paying job like your dad and me. That's all that should matter for you. So yeah, pretty much, they had high expectations of me. They got me enrolled in the best school of the city and even forced me to take many different classes after school. You need to have an all-rounded personality, Betty, Dad would say. I don't want my child to lag behind. Of course, they didn't care about what I wanted. If they thought that I needed to get programming classes, then I had to, no matter what. They couldn't see that 6 hours of school and then 6 hours of the so-called extra classes was taking a toll on me. I couldn't even make time for self-studying. It was a vicious circle of home, school, and extra classes. Even the weekends were not a relief to me. My parents would always take me to this party, and there they would compare me to the other kids and put more pressure on me to be better than those kids. One day, I collapsed in my school. The doctor said that it was because of stress and not taking proper rest. Betty, why are you doing this to us? Mom exclaimed when we got back home. We provide you with everything. Why can't you take care of yourself? I don't want my daughter to look weak in front of others, Dad added. Betty, I will enroll you in a physical fitness class. Learn to take care of yourself. Now, that was the day I snapped. Not outwardly, of course. On the outside, I was still their obedient daughter who just smiled and agreed with everything they said. But on the inside, I was boiling with rage. I was done playing the good daughter and suffering. What was the use of listening to them when they couldn't even acknowledge my efforts? I started my silent rebellion from the very next day. I started bunking my classes. If I did attend them, I used them to make up for my sleep. After school was over, I would go over to my friend's house to pass the time. I barely attended any of my extra classes, and I was not just doing this because of my parents. I was simply not interested in those classes. Of course, my parents soon received the complaints from my teachers, but nothing they said affected me anymore. They could scold me and all, but they couldn't physically force me to go and attend my classes. They were helpless. My grades were affected too, and contrary to my parents' expectations, I was flunking. Big time. Betty, enough is enough! My dad yelled one day. What has gotten into you? You didn't used to be like this. I am so sorry, Dad. I made an innocent face. I'm trying my best. You know, we should be grateful that I'm managing to pass at all. Betty, Mom exclaimed in a horrified voice. I shrugged. It's true, Mom. Sorry if I offended you, but this is my capacity. I can't do any better than this. These kinds of fights happened every other day, and just like that, I graduated from high school with really bad grades. I couldn't secure admission in any good college with such grades, but my parents were not going to let me go to a community college, of course. It was a question of their reputation. They used their connections and got me enrolled in one of the best universities of the U.S. I really didn't want it, but oh well, what could I say? We are sending you to learn about business and economics, Dad said. By the time you graduate, you will have a really good job at your hands. Don't let this opportunity go, Betty. How ironic. He wanted me to study economics when I already knew most of the things there were to it. Okay, so I may have left out a few details from my high school story. When I was around the age of 15, the time when I started to rebel against my parents was also the time when I started something else. I started my own online business. Now, you all didn't really think that I was just a spoiled brat who didn't care about her future, did you? Of course I wanted to disobey my parents, but I needed a backup plan for my career as well. The only subject that remotely interested me was business and economics. I did some research on how I could trade my sneakers and collection cards online, and, well, the rest is history. At first, it started out slow. I used to get reasonable prices for my stuff, but as time passed and I learned a few tricks of the business, it got better. There were more and more customers and more orders. I was able to buy the items for selling now that I had earned some money. My business slowly grew this way. Within a year or two, I was earning a small fortune. My parents were unaware of this, of course. I made sure to keep it a secret. As more time passed, I started earning more than the income of all my high school teachers combined. I didn't really know how much my parents earned, but I was at a stage where I could say that more or less I was at par with them. That was pretty much the story of my online business. Now, I also had other stuff going on, like e-learning courses, and fortunately, everything was successful so far. I don't know why, but for some reason, I didn't want my parents to know about any of it. Maybe it was because I knew that they would start showing me fake affection if they found out that I was earning so much. I didn't want that. I was okay with whatever I was getting from them in the form of feelings. At least they were genuine. And moreover, I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of bragging about me to their friends and colleagues. Anyway, so I went to this university that they got me enrolled into. My first day there, and I already knew that it was a place from hell, the economics professor had it out for me for some reason. Apparently, he had checked my grade card and stuff, and he didn't like the fact that I got admission to the university with such low grades. He started humiliating me in front of the entire class, bringing up my low grades again and again. Do you see these students? He pointed towards my classmates. They are all toppers of their schools. This is a class of achievers. You don't belong here. If you have a problem with me, then why don't you take it up with my parents and the admissions officer? This is what I wanted to say, but I kept my mouth shut. I knew better than to talk back to a professor. This went on day after day. Because of him, I had become an outcast of my batch. No student wanted to associate with an underachiever like me. Moreover, this so-called professor didn't even have his concepts straight. I had been noticing it from day one. Firstly, he used to teach us only the theory part, completely neglecting the practical application. And secondly, he usually relied on bookish knowledge. It was like he had mugged up the concepts and often made mistakes while teaching. If a student cross-questioned him, he would usually just yell and shut them up. Well, that student who used to cross-question was usually me. But that's besides the point. If he considered himself to be so high and mighty and so well versed in his subject, he should have been able to clear my doubts, right? Instead, he only used to humiliate me if I ever asked him anything. None of my classmates ever sided with me or spoke against him. It was so frustrating. I used to give a few lectures in my e-learning classes. They were all about conducting a successful online business, creating and selling products, etc. My lectures were pretty popular among the online students, and as someone who used to teach them, it was pretty frustrating to see that my professor was making a mess of the whole course in the university. 2 semesters passed like this. I don't know how I tolerated those classes and those useless lectures by the economics professor. I had made up my mind to drop out of the university during the 3rd semester. One day, a guy from my class approached me while I was sitting by myself in the cafeteria. I was pretty surprised because none of my classmates had ever talked to me. They usually avoided me because no one wanted to get on the bad side of the professor because of me. "Hi, I'm Ben," the guy said, scratching his neck awkwardly. "Yeah?" I nodded. "We are in the same class. I know you." I don't know how to ask you this, but," he started, earning a frown from me. "Aren't you the girl who gives online lectures on practical uses of business and economics?" My eyes widened. "You've seen my lectures?" He nodded, smiling. "Yeah, I've been watching your lectures since the last semester. I must say, they are really helpful, and now I understand why you're against the way of teaching from our professor. He is not really doing a good job." "Yeah," I sighed. "It's really unbearable for me. I'm going to drop out soon. I can't stand his classes. Not to mention the grudge that he holds against me." Ben was quiet for a moment before he took a seat in front of me. I have a suggestion, if you don't mind. Why don't you help out the students of our university with your knowledge? It will be good for your business as well as the students who would learn something useful too. It's just a suggestion though. The final decision is up to you." I gave it a thought, then looked to meet his eyes. "I will be dropping out soon though, and I don't really think that any of the students are too keen on talking to me." "You don't have to remain at the university to do it. And as for the students, don't worry about them. I will convince a few of my friends to attend your classes. I'm pretty sure that your lectures will get popular among other students soon." Well, it wasn't a bad idea, and I had nothing to lose anyway, so I nodded. "Let's give it a try," I told him with a thankful smile. I dropped out of college soon after that. I didn't tell anyone, of course. I couldn't let my parents find out about it. I rented an office space in front of the university and promoted my e-learning business there. I received my first batch of students from the university itself, with Ben's help. These students were convinced after attending a few of my lectures. As Ben had predicted, my courses got more popular and my business started doing even better than it was doing before. All the students who had enrolled with my courses were helping in opening their own businesses, and almost all of them proved to be successful within a short span of a few months. But there was a slight problem with these students. They used to complain that it was tough for them to manage their university studies and online business simultaneously. I had only one piece of advice for them: to drop out of the university. I mean, they couldn't expect to perform better in both aspects because both the things were equally demanding. I had first-hand experience of it. However, when I was in university, my business was already producing millions in turnover, so I had a lot of staff to help me. But these students who had just started out their businesses needed to dedicate their time and attention to it in order to be successful in the long run. If this is what you really want to do, I told them, then you don't have to think twice about dropping out. Your life is already set with your online business. And most of them took my advice and dropped out. I must say, I was a bit nervous because it was not my life. What if something went wrong with them and they blamed me for it? But all that nervousness vanished after a few weeks when the businesses of those students started performing better and better. I had now successfully achieved what I wanted. I could proudly say that my online courses were more helpful than that of the best university of the US. Students never stopped coming to my office. More and more students were dropping out of the university and starting their own online business. Soon enough, a wave of dropouts was created, and obviously the university was going to take a note of this fact. They started investigating into the matter to find out what exactly was happening. Well, too bad that they found out everything, but never found out that one of their dropouts, aka me, was the reason behind all this mess. You see, I never exposed my real occupation to them. I was just one of the students who had dropped out along with many others. They never really found out that I was the one running the courses that taught real-life online business to the students. I had even hired some of the students as teachers for my course, after they had successfully completed their study under me. The university was planning on attacking my business and shutting all of it down, but it was pretty difficult for them given that they didn't even know the CEO. I must say it was quite a show. They were interrogating the students, the dropouts, the professors, but they never found out the truth. I wish they knew that they needed to change their professors instead of investigating a business that was stealing its students. But, oh well. I still couldn't forget my economics professor, the man because of whom all this happened in the first place. It was funny how the negative things in my life had always driven me to do something worthwhile. First, it was my parents who pushed me to the edge. It was all thanks to them that I retaliated and discovered my passion for economics and business. At least something good came out of all the mean things they had done to me. And after my parents, it was my professor, who drove me to help the students at the university to establish their own successful online ventures. I wondered if my professor still remembered me, the girl he had always humiliated and insulted, the girl who had become an outcast because of him. And my parents. I hadn't really received any calls or texts from them, aside from the occasional, "How are you doing at the university?" But what else was I expecting? They had just sent me here to get my degree and then get a job. They didn't care for anything else. Heck, they didn't even bother visiting me. Did they even think about my well-being, or if I was happy? I doubted it. They were too busy earning money. I couldn't help but laugh every time I thought about how my own parents didn't know that their daughter was a college dropout who was earning millions from her online business. Anyway, as all the stuff with the university was happening, a crisis suddenly struck. It was a worldwide tragedy, and it hit the economy severely. All the businesses were affected, and most of the multinational companies started firing their employees to cut costs. Everyone had now turned to online business, which was the only sector where profit still prevailed. Everything else was in danger. Even universities and colleges were suffering greatly and were almost on the verge of disappearing. Students were now adopting online learning methods. It was a golden period for my company. Business was thriving. All the businessmen that my company had produced were doing well too. In short, this crisis really didn't affect me, but it did prove to be fatal for some people I knew. I was casually lounging near the reception area of the main branch of my company when a man entered. He went to the receptionist and started inquiring about the course for online practices. His familiar voice piqued my interest, and I looked up to see that it was my dearest economics professor from the university that I used to attend. I didn't waste any time walking up to him and greeting him. Sir, what brings you here? I asked in genuine curiosity. I want to enroll in the course for online business practices, he replied. What are you doing here? What have you been up to after dropping out of college? Don't tell me that you're still lazing around wasting your parents' money. Excuse me, sir, the receptionist spoke. You can't talk to her like that. She is our CEO. Please treat her with respect. The professor's jaw hit the floor, and I shook my head with a sad smile. Do you still think so lowly of me? I asked. I don't know what I ever did to you, but it really hurts that you hate me for no apparent reason at all. He stuttered, avoiding my eye contact. You had such low grades. How could I not hate you? You didn't belong in my class. And you always used to cross-question me, even when I knew that I couldn't answer your queries. Of course I hated you. Well, someone's low grades are not an excuse for humiliating them, I replied. Even with my low grades, I am running such a big company today, aren't I? And as for you, not being able to answer my questions, that was your incapacity as a professor. You have no right to blame me for that. He sighed. I know now. I really didn't deserve to be a professor. That's why I'm here today. I want to learn something useful and do my own thing. My theoretical knowledge is getting me nowhere, especially at a time like this, when everyone is turning to online learning. I really need to learn something practical and useful. Well, at least he had come to a realization now. I assigned him to a class which was taught by a 21-year-old dropout student. I really couldn't stop laughing at the irony of the whole situation. I knew for a fact that it was really tough for the professor to swallow his pride and attend the lectures of a 21-year-old. Meanwhile, I got a call from my parents. They had lost their jobs and were now unemployed. Of course they called me to tell me about their problems. They even told me to look for a part-time job and earn my own income because they couldn't support me. I told them not to worry about me. And jokingly, I added that they should try applying in my company as we had various vacancies. Of course, I didn't tell them it was my company. I just said that I had seen the company on the internet. I didn't know that they would take my word seriously and would actually apply for a job. Imagine my surprise when I got to work one day to find my parents cleaning my office. I dropped my handbag in shock. They looked up to see me and seemed equally surprised. Mom? Dad? What are you doing here? I asked in an unstable voice. Betty? Mom said in surprise. What a coincidence. Do you work here too? We applied for this company as you had told us to. Luckily, we got the job, Dad said. It's not much. I mean, it's quite pathetic that we are working as janitors now, but in times of such crisis, we have no other option. I had never even thought in my wildest dreams that my parents, who were all about wealth and social status, would be working janitors one day. Fate could be really cruel sometimes, huh? Everyone's life was taking a 180-degree turn, and I couldn't help but feel like they deserved what they were getting. But at the end of the day, those people were my parents, and I couldn't just not tell them. They would find out sooner or later. Then again, I wanted to keep it a secret and let them do what they were doing. I had never been so torn in my life. It was such a dilemma. Should I tell them or not?